Welcome back to Pastime Woodworking. I started a new project. We're going to make a table out of this red oak here. It's going to be a round table, and it's going to look like that. It's a simple round table. It'll be relatively easy to do with hand tools. Still challenging, but relatively easy. So this board right here in front of me, it's a red oak board I've already started. These are quite wide boards. This one's actually about a foot wide, and it started as 6/4 rough sawn stock. And what I'll do is I'll pick a top side for the table. This is going to be one of the center boards, and this is about the diameter. It'll be 42 to 44 inch diameter tabletop. So I've selected a top side, and I've got it pretty flat as I need to for right now. I've taken my winding sticks and checked for wind to make sure that there's no twist in it. So even though this board will continue to move a little bit and I'll have to do some adjustments after it's glued up, it's pretty close to what I want. So we'll call this board done for now. On the underside, I've cleaned it up. There's still little rough parts, but I've cleaned it up with my planes about as far as I might even go, especially for right now. We'll set this aside. So this is the second board to work on for this project. So I've taken some time to assess this board. It's a rough sawn from my wood supplier. And like I said, it's the same. It's 6/4 material red oak, which is it's 1.5 inches thick, nominal 1.5 inches thick. Like I said, I've selected the better side. I've identified that it's high all the way through the center of the board, and there's also a crown end to end. So I would take off more material here, and down through the middle to get started. Once I've taken some of the material off, and periodically we'll be checking for wind. And these are winding sticks that I made up. And we'll just be checking for wind. Right now, this is high, the way this is setting, and this corner's high. But we don't need to concern ourselves with that yet. For those that don't know, wind is you're checking for a twist in the board. So just like I said, there could be a crown this way. There could be a crown, which is a curving, surface curving this way. There's a surface curving this way, long length of the board. But there can also be a twist in the board. And that's what these winding sticks do. They're planes are the same thickness. They're straight as you could get it. And what they'll do is they'll exaggerate when you sight down. You could sight down the top of these, and you're trying to line up these darkened little markings there. And in an extreme example, you might sight and it might look like this to your eye. So you hand plane down to these, come into the same flat plane across. And then at least the board isn't twisted down the length. For planes, I'm a huge fan of wooden planes. You've got your scrub planes, you got your smooth planes. These are planes that I've made. Some I've restored. There's a plane here you'll see me using for the scrub operation, which is just roughing down the stock. That's kind of a continental style, horn style. This one here is actually pretty interesting. I got this at a yard. We'll spend a few minutes talking about this. This is a very old style plane. I mean, it could easily be 18th century. I got it in a yard sale, and it was in such bad condition. And this is when I restored it to working condition, 92 for 1992. So I would say I started heavily into traditional woodworking in 1990. And this plane's been with me. There was no handle. There was an early attempt 30 years ago. I made a handle with beechwood that I had, and was made an attempt to make it antique looking, but I didn't achieve that. It's a working plane. It's got, this area here was so chipped out and destroyed by hammering, you know, plane hammering or metal hammering, that I just inset some beechwood and I put a strike button of dogwood that I had. I harvested my own beech for the bottom and put this together. What's original is the top part of the plane and then the wedge and the iron. So at the time, you know, and of course everything was really rusted. Look at that, look at that. This would be unusual for modern wooden plane, or more modern wooden plane. The thickness of the wedge. Single iron was the style of the day before they had double irons. It's relatively thin, and this works well for what I use it for. I use this actually, and it works very well for that. This might be my most used plane, or most frequently used plane. I use it as a scrub plane. It's got heavy weight. I'm rough setting the iron. I'll tap the wedge home. This is my own homemade plane hammer. It's just a tack hammer with a piece of hickory glued on the end. And it works well. I guess I always had the intention of making or buying something better, but it works well. Okay, so what I just did is set the iron on this plane. We'll call it a scrub plane. And for those you might be interested, 26.5 inches. That's his plane. So it's identified as an older plane, obviously, by the single iron, by the thick wedge, by the offset handle. It's not in the center of the plane. It's offset. The body that's left is beechwood. It did have a maker's stamp on it, or a name, and I can't read it. Actually, more legible than I thought. But yeah, you'll see this in use. And then the other planes I have some other planes that I've made, and more in the cabinet. I don't know if you can see the cabinet in the back, but there's more in the cabinet there. Here's a ship style, or ship carpenter style plane. We'll use this. And then I have this one, but I've used so far. So I've got planes out here that are ready to go for this project. All right, so far, you know, I've worked with, you know, a small scrub plane. I've gone to a bigger plane that I use for a scrub. And I noticed that the smaller plane, there was a little bit of tear out in this area here. Now I do know that this board, it varies. You always want to plane with the grain. Here it appears I'm planing against the grain. Here I know for a fact I was planing with the grain, but I'm going to spin the board around a minute to see if sometimes you can, you know, when you do that against what your first evaluation of the board, sometimes it works out for you. You'll get less tear out overall. I'm getting the board here a little bit. It's got a little bit of twist in it. I'm shimming it up just to give it a little bit of support. You might have noticed, you might just think it's camera work. I'm left-handed. I've set up this simple bench for a left-handed person. I've got a simple end vise that I use as a stop. This board is not, it's loose. I like that. I can move the board around easily. It's not clamped in any way. The front side of the bench has a skirt I could put bench dogs in. And later on when I go to join these boards, we'll be doing that. You'll see that. We won't make this video too long. I'll just make it long enough so you get an idea of the process. So I'm still roughing it out. And it's still pretty rough, and the surface. That's why you don't see me making long passes yet, even with this joiner length plane. Set this aside a minute. I can see that wasn't working out for me too well, so I'll turn it back around. Getting more tear out that I want. I'm almost ready to switch planes to a regular flat. I'll do a little bit more, and you could go back to this plane. Thing I appreciate about the wooden planes, you know, in my opinion, they're less fidgety. You know, you don't see me turning knobs and, you know, and then, you know, working levers. There's none of that. You'll see me, and that's one of the beauties of having multiple planes. I could set them up for, you know, thicker, finer. They're easy to adjust. Right now, if I wanted to take a finer cut, I just simply have to, you know, wrap the back of the plane and reset the wedge. That's it. Probably didn't want to do that, but put it back. You tap. If you want a little more cutting action, just tap the iron forward. It might be too much now. Put it back. Good. So I could use a straight edge. I've checked progress. You can feel it also. I could feel that it's high here. This is not bad. So I could feel it's high here. And it took me years, but you should be using your hands to feel the wood as a regular practice. Now this plane's been flattened, and you'll see that it's seeking out the high spots. It'll start cutting in the high spots. Tools could talk. This, who knows what project this plane body's worked on. This plane body and iron over the years have worked on. All right, so at this point, I might continue on with this, but at this point we'll switch to another plane.